Snow was falling the night Emma Parker's life collapsed. It wasn't gentle or soft, every flake hit her skin like a reminder of everything she had lost. She sat at the lonely bus stop, her thin beige dress soaked, her arms wrapped around her trembling body, her suitcase beside her gathering snow. Behind her, the world moved on, headlights sweeping past, strangers hurrying home to warmth she no longer had. A few hours earlier, she had still believed she had a family. She had still believed she was loved. She had still believed she mattered. But now she sat alone in the freezing night, the words that had shattered her echoing mercilessly, "You're infertile. Useless. Get out. If you believe kindness still exists, and that everyone deserves second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel so more people can hear stories like this." Emma's breath trembled in the cold air as she replayed every moment that had led to this night. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of trying. 3 years of hearing her husband, Mark, go from patient, to irritated, to cruel. When the doctor gently explained that Emma had complications that made pregnancy very unlikely, she had cried in Mark's arms, believing they would face it together. But Mark had changed. Slowly at first, quiet resentment, sharp comments, long silences. Then came the accusations, the blame, the disgust. And tonight, when she came home from her shift at the cafe, she found her suitcase by the door and Mark's divorce papers on the table. No apology. No hesitation. No remorse. Just a cold, flat, "I already found someone who can give me a real family." The words gutted her in places she didn't know could bleed. She left because begging would only humiliate her further. She walked out into the storm with nowhere to go, her heart fractured, her future erased, and only one thought pounding in her head: what did I ever do to deserve this? Cars rushed by. None slowed. None noticed. She pulled her legs closer to her chest, trying to shield herself from the cold seeping through her dress. Her fingers were stiff and red. Her hair, damp with melting snow, clung to her face. She had no plan, only pain. The kind that swallowed a person whole. Through her blurred vision, a pair of headlights approached but didn't pass. Instead, the vehicle slowed, then stopped a few feet away. The doors opened, and 3 small figures stepped onto the snow-covered sidewalk, 2 little girls in red and green jackets, and a small boy bundled in yellow. And behind them, a tall man in a long dark coat. The man's posture was strong but his expression held something gentle, something concerned, something deeply human. He wasn't looking at the snow, or the road, or the darkness, he was looking at her. Emma blinked rapidly, unsure if she was imagining the scene. Why would a stranger, especially one with children in tow, stop for her? But the man didn't leave. He didn't rush back into the warm shelter of his car. Instead, he stood there, allowing the snow to gather on his coat as he studied her with worried eyes. His children gathered around his legs, watching silently. The man took a slow step forward, never making her feel threatened, never making her recoil. There was an unspoken kindness radiating from him, a warmth she hadn't felt in years. He seemed like someone from another world entirely, someone untouched by cruelty. His face wasn't harsh or judgmental. It was compassionate. Emma tried to straighten up, but her body was stiff and weak. When she attempted to stand, her legs trembled beneath her and she wavered, nearly falling back onto the bench. The man instinctively took another step forward, but he didn't touch her. He respected her space, simply waiting until she steadied herself. It was then that their eyes fully met. Emma saw not pity, but a deep, anchored understanding, as if he recognized the kind of pain she carried. And something inside her cracked open, releasing a sob she'd been choking back since the moment she was thrown out of her home. The man's voice was low, warm, steady. He didn't ask intrusive questions. He didn't judge. He didn't recoil from her brokenness or the state of her clothes or the red blotchiness of her tear-streaked face. He simply said the few words no one else had said to her that night, the words that shifted the entire path of her life. "Come with me." Those 3 words, simple as they were, thawed something inside her. Something frozen. Something that had been dying. The man introduced himself softly as Jake Harrison. A single father of 3. A man whose life had not been gentle either. His wife had passed away 2 years earlier, leaving him to raise his children while running a company that demanded every ounce of his strength. The exhaustion clung to him like a shadow, yet he still found space to be kind. Still found space to care. Still found space to stop in the middle of a snowstorm for a stranger who had no one. Emma didn't know why she trusted him. She didn't know why the sight of his children, their innocent eyes watching her with quiet curiosity, made her chest ache in the most unexpected way. She didn't know why Jake's voice made her feel safe. All she knew was that every part of her was breaking apart, and he was the only solid thing she could cling to. Jake offered her warmth. Offered her help. Offered her a chance to stand up again. Inside Jake's SUV, the warmth enveloped her instantly. The children whispered to each other, stealing glances at her. Jake turned on the heater, grabbed a spare blanket from the back seat, and handed it to her gently, like she was something fragile. Not broken. Not defective. Just fragile. Emma hadn't realized how cold she was until her fingers tingled painfully under the heat. Her eyes fluttered shut, exhaustion pulling at her bones. She thought Jake would question her, ask who she was, why she was alone, where her family was. But he didn't push her. He simply drove in silence, giving her space to breathe for the first time in hours. When they arrived at his home, a large but warm farmhouse outside the city, Emma felt a flicker of fear. Not fear of him, but fear of accepting kindness she didn't think she deserved. The house looked lived in and cozy. Toys scattered on the carpet. Children's drawings taped to the fridge. A life full of chaos and love. As she stepped inside, the children ran ahead to remove their jackets, their laughter echoing softly through the hall. Jake asked if she wanted tea, but he didn't force her. He offered her clean clothes, his late wife's, still folded neatly in a drawer. Emma hesitated before accepting them, her throat tight. She changed slowly in the guest bathroom, her heart swelling with complicated emotions. Wearing someone else's clothes, standing in someone else's home, it felt surreal. Wrong, almost. Like she was intruding on a life she had no place in. But when she looked at her reflection in the mirror, wrapped in warmth, no longer trembling, she didn't look like a discarded, unwanted woman. She looked like someone who might one day be okay. Jake prepared a simple warm meal, soup and bread, and set it in front of her without fuss. Emma's hands trembled as she lifted the spoon, realizing she hadn't eaten since morning. The soup wasn't just hot, it felt like comfort. Like compassion. Like being seen. As she ate, Jake quietly tended to his children, answering questions, wiping noses, guiding them to bed. He didn't ask Emma to help, but she found herself standing anyway, offering to tuck in the youngest. The little boy clung to her instantly, his small arms wrapping around her neck with trust so pure it made her chest tighten. When the children were asleep, Jake returned to the kitchen where Emma washed dishes despite his gentle protest. It was the first time she felt useful since Mark's words shattered her. It wasn't until the house grew quiet that Jake finally asked the question she knew was coming: what happened? The truth spilled out of her slowly, not because she wanted to burden him but because his presence made her feel safe enough to breathe. She told him everything, her infertility diagnosis, Mark's cruelty, the humiliation of being thrown out, the emptiness that followed. Jake listened without interruption. Not once did he look away or judge. When she finished, tears ran silently down her cheeks. She whispered that she understood if he wanted her gone by morning, that she'd only meant to stay until the storm passed. But Jake didn't send her away. Instead, he spoke with a steadiness she didn't expect. The moment the billionaire collapsed, the world inside the 32nd floor executive conference room froze. Paperwork scattered. Coffee mugs crashed. And in the center of the chaos, Emma Carter, a single mother, a janitor no one ever noticed, a woman who had spent her life cleaning up after others, dropped to her knees beside the fallen man. The CEO of the company, Alexander Hayes, lay motionless on the polished floor, sunlight spilling across his face through the tall glass windows. No one moved. No one stepped forward. Except her. Emma's trembling hands hovered over him as she realized he had stopped breathing. The muffled gasps around her faded as instinct took over, and with tears pricking her eyes, she pressed her mouth to his and gave him the breath of life he desperately needed. That was the moment everything in her ordinary, overlooked world changed forever. Sparkles, if you believe kindness and second chances still matter in this world, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. Sparkles. Emma Carter had never imagined her day beginning like this. That morning had been like the 100 mornings before it, waking up before dawn in her tiny apartment in Ohio, brushing her daughter Lily's golden hair into a neat ponytail, and tucking a handwritten note into her backpack telling her how loved she was. Emma had been a janitor for Hayes Global for 3 years, scrubbing floors and cleaning offices for people who wouldn't remember her name even if she wore it on a neon sign. She'd taken the job because it paid a little more than her previous one and because it came with health insurance, something she desperately needed after her ex-husband walked out when Lily was only 2. Life hadn't been easy, but Emma had always taught her daughter that light could be found even in dark places, if only one looked hard enough. That morning, she had entered the executive floor with her card and gloves, humming a tune she hoped would distract her from the eviction notice reminder taped to her fridge. She had bills stacking like mountains. She had car repairs she couldn't afford. And Lily had outgrown her shoes again. Emma's prayers had lately become quieter, more desperate, whispered late at night when the world was asleep. She had no idea God was about to answer in a way she never expected. As she cleaned the hallway outside the big glass conference room, she heard raised voices, the sounds of tension woven into corporate chaos. The company had been struggling with a major financial scandal, and Alexander Hayes, the billionaire CEO known for his discipline, brilliance, and cold-faced leadership, had been carrying that burden alone. Rumors whispered of long nights, skipped meals, and stress levels that could break even the strongest souls. Emma didn't know him personally, but she'd often seen him walking through the halls with a determined stride, unaware that she admired his resilience from afar. Then it happened. Through the glass, she saw him falter mid-speech, his hand clutching his chest. His face drained of color, and before anyone could react, his body crumpled. A heavy, terrifying silence swallowed the room. The employees stood stunned, frozen in fear. Phones were pulled out, but no one moved close enough to help. Emma didn't think, she simply let instinct and compassion guide her. She rushed in, sliding to the floor beside him, calling for someone to dial 911 as she checked for breathing. There was none. His pulse was faint. Her heart pounded as she lifted his head gently onto her lap, praying she remembered everything she learned years ago when she took a CPR class required for her old job. Her trembling lips pressed against his. Breath, compressions, the world spun into a blur of desperation and courage. And then, a faint gasp. His chest lifted weakly, and someone shouted that an ambulance was on the way. Emma leaned over him, tears falling freely now, her yellow cleaning gloves resting on his expensive suit as she whispered reassurance he couldn't hear. That was the moment someone snapped a photo. By the next morning, the photo had exploded across the internet. The image of a humble janitor giving life-saving CPR to a billionaire CEO had gone viral. News channels replayed the moment endlessly. Social media painted her as a hero. Strangers praised her bravery. But Emma didn't feel like a hero, she felt exposed. Terrified. She had never asked to be known. She only wanted to do the right thing. Meanwhile, Alexander Hayes woke up in a hospital room with the memory of collapsing and the faint sensation of someone pulling him back from darkness. The first thing he saw when he turned on the television was the photo, how his life had been saved by a woman he didn't even know. He stared at it for a long time, moved in a way he couldn't explain, his chest tightening not with pain now, but with overwhelming gratitude. A billionaire with everything had been saved by someone society often never saw. The next day, cameras filled the lobby of Hayes Global. Reporters swarmed the entrance, but Emma didn't show up for work. She was overwhelmed, afraid she would be fired for disrupting a meeting. Afraid of attention. Afraid of everything spiraling beyond her control. Instead, she stayed home, trying to shield Lily from the sudden spotlight. But Alexander Hayes wasn't a man who ignored life-changing moments. Still recovering, he instructed his driver to take him to the address listed on Emma's employment file. When Emma opened her door and saw him standing there, tall, impeccably dressed even in recovery, eyes sincere, she nearly slammed the door out of panic. But he spoke gently, thanking her for saving his life and asking if he could talk. She hesitated, then led him inside the modest apartment filled with second-hand furniture and Lily's crayon drawings taped proudly on the walls. Seeing Emma in her true environment softened something inside him. She wasn't just the woman in the viral photo, she was a mother, a survivor, a woman carrying burdens heavier than anyone realized. As they talked, Alexander listened, really listened, to her struggles, her dreams of giving Lily a better life, and the quiet strength woven through every word she spoke. For the first time in years, he felt something shift in his heart. Over the next weeks, Alexander made it his mission to ensure Emma's life changed for the better, but not in a flashy, disrespectful way. He offered her a promotion to a staff coordinator position, giving her a fair salary and training. He arranged for Lily to have a scholarship at a good school, insisting it was the least he could do. And he visited Emma often, claiming he was checking on her new role, but in truth, he simply couldn't stay away. Emma was cautious at first. She was used to people leaving, disappointing, or judging her. But Alexander wasn't that. Beneath the billionaire exterior, he was kind, thoughtful, and deeply grateful. Slowly, she allowed herself to trust him, though she constantly reminded herself to stay grounded. Their worlds were different, night and day, janitor and billionaire, but they found themselves drawn to each other in ways neither expected. He admired her resilience, she admired his humility. He found comfort in her honesty, she found peace in his presence. But not everyone approved. Rumors swirled around the company. Some employees whispered that Emma had staged the whole thing. Others claimed she was trying to seduce the CEO. Someone leaked more photos. Emma nearly quit to protect her dignity, but Alexander wouldn't let her. He stood before the entire board, defending her character publicly, reminding them she was the reason he was alive. His unwavering support brought Emma to tears. One evening after work, Alexander invited Emma and Lily to the company's rooftop garden. Soft lights glowed around the perimeter, and the city stretched beyond them like a field of stars. Lily ran to the fountain joyfully, leaving Emma and Alexander standing alone under the sky. Alexander took Emma's hands, gratitude heavy in his eyes. He told her how she had changed him, how her courage had awakened parts of him he'd long buried beneath stress and responsibility. Emma felt tears build as she realized she had allowed herself to care for him too. But fear lingered. Love felt dangerous. Emma was a single mom who had been left behind before. Could she really risk her heart again? Yet, as Alexander brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch soft, filled with unspoken tenderness, she felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years. A reminder that maybe, just maybe, she deserved happiness too. Still, their story wasn't smooth. The media storm continued. A harsh article questioned Emma's intentions, causing her to break down in her kitchen late one night. She feared losing her job, her reputation, everything she had worked for.